The mall was busy for a Saturday afternoon. Families crowding the food court, music drifting from the arcade, the smell of pretzels in the air. Marcus Thompson, 16, sat alone at a small table near the fountain, scrolling through his phone and sipping a soda. He wasn't loud, wasn't causing trouble. He was just waiting for his mother to finish her shift upstairs. A few tables away, a white security guard named Henderson noticed him. He'd seen Marcus before, maybe once or twice, and for reasons even he couldn't explain. Something about the boy rubbed him wrong. Maybe it was the hoodie. Maybe it was the color of his skin. Either way, Henderson decided Marcus didn't belong there. He walked over, chest out, radio clipped high on his shoulder. "Hey kid," he said sharply. "You planning to buy something or just hanging around?" Marcus looked up, confused. "I'm just waiting for my mom. She works here." Henderson frowned. "Sure she does. I've heard that one before. You can't just loiter around the mall." "I'm not loitering," Marcus replied evenly. "I'm sitting here, that's all." But Henderson wasn't interested in explanations. He kept pressing. Where was his mother? What store? What floor? What department? The more Marcus answered, the less the guard believed him. Shoppers began to notice the exchange, glancing over their trays of food. Then Henderson's voice grew louder. "Pack it up, kid. Let's go. You can wait outside." Marcus hesitated, his cheeks burning. "I didn't do anything wrong." "That's not your call to make," Henderson snapped, grabbing the edge of Marcus's chair. People stopped eating. Some pulled out their phones. A mother nearby whispered, "He wasn't bothering anyone." Marcus stood, his hands trembling slightly but his voice steady. "You're making a mistake." The guard's smirk widened. "The only mistake would be letting you stay." He pointed toward the exit. "Out." And so, with everyone watching, Marcus was marched through the food court and out the glass doors of the mall, his backpack half unzipped, his pride torn in two. Behind him, a few shoppers shook their heads. One of them muttered, "That poor kid." Another whispered, "He said his mom works here." Henderson didn't care. To him, it was just another day on duty. But within the hour, he'd realized that the teenager he'd just thrown out wasn't some random kid. He was the mall manager's son, and Henderson had just picked a fight with the wrong family. Marcus stood just outside the mall's entrance, the automatic doors sliding shut behind him with a hiss that felt like rejection. The cool air hit his face, but it didn't calm the heat rising in his chest. Inside, shoppers still moved about like nothing had happened, while he stood outside with nothing but a backpack and a bruised sense of dignity. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his hands. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't resisted. But that didn't stop people from staring at him like he was guilty of something. Moments earlier, when Henderson had grabbed his chair, Marcus had tried to reason with him. He'd even shown his student ID. "See?" he'd said quietly. "I'm just waiting for my mom. She's at work." But the guard hadn't cared. "Not my problem," he'd said, his hand firm on Marcus's shoulder. "You can wait outside. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Marcus remembered the way people looked away, pretending not to see. The silence was the worst part. No one spoke up. No one stepped forward. He felt invisible, until someone pulled out their phone and started recording. That's when he realized the humiliation wasn't just his to feel. It was everyone else's entertainment. Now, standing by the fountain outside, he scrolled his phone without really seeing anything. He didn't want to call his mom yet. She worked hard, long hours, and he didn't want to cause trouble for her. But deep down, a part of him knew this wasn't something he could just let go. Inside, Henderson was back on his rounds, feeling satisfied. In his mind, he'd done his job, kept order, made sure the rules were followed. When a coworker asked what had happened, he shrugged. Kid was loitering. Happens all the time. Did he do anything? The coworker asked, uneasy. Henderson waved the question away. Didn't have to. You can tell when someone's up to something. That was the kind of answer Henderson had given for years. It was the shield behind which prejudice hid comfortably. Just doing my job. Meanwhile, a few shoppers had gathered around the table Marcus had been sitting at. They whispered among themselves. One woman, middle-aged with kind eyes, spoke up to a nearby janitor. "That boy wasn't bothering anyone," she said softly. "I hope he tells someone." The janitor nodded grimly. "He will. Folks like that always get found out." Outside, Marcus finally sat down on the edge of a low planter. His phone buzzed. His best friend, Jaden, had already seen a video posted online. "Bro, was that you in the food court?" The message read. "What happened?" Marcus sighed, typing slowly. "Yeah. Security threw me out for sitting there." Within minutes, replies started rolling in. Classmates expressing shock, a few angry messages from friends, and one that said, "My mom saw it on Facebook already." Marcus's stomach sank. He hadn't realized how fast news could travel. He wasn't embarrassed for himself anymore. He was embarrassed for his mom. She'd worked her way up from assistant manager to running the entire mall. She'd spent years earning the respect of her colleagues. And now, her son had just been thrown out of her own workplace. He finally hit call. "Hey, Mom?" His voice cracked a little. "Can you come down for a second?" Something happened. Angela Thompson was in a conference room when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, smiled when she saw Marcus's name, and excused herself from the meeting. "Give me one moment," she told her team. She always answered when her son called, but when she heard his voice, tight, uneasy, trembling at the edges, her smile vanished. "What happened, baby?" she asked, already reaching for her blazer. "They kicked me out," Marcus said quietly. Angela froze. "What do you mean they kicked you out?" "Who?" "The mall security," he said. "Some guard said I was loitering. I told him I was waiting for you, but he didn't believe me." Angela's pulse quickened. "Where are you now?" "Outside, by the fountain." "I'll be right there," she said, and hung up before he could protest. She didn't take the elevator. She took the stairs, heels striking the steps like gunshots. People moved out of her way. She'd managed this mall for almost 5 years, handling everything from tenant disputes to full-blown emergencies. But this was personal. When she stepped outside, she saw him immediately. Marcus sat slouched near the fountain, eyes red but head held high. He stood up the second he saw her, trying to act like he was fine. "What happened?" she asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. He hesitated. "It's fine, Mom. Don't worry about it." "Marcus," she said firmly, "tell me." He sighed, looking down. "The security guard said I couldn't sit there. Said I was making people uncomfortable. I tried to tell him you worked here, but he didn't care. He just told me to leave. In front of everyone." Angela felt something twist in her chest. Anger, disbelief, and heartbreak all at once. "Did he touch you?" Marcus hesitated. "He grabbed my chair. Told me not to argue." That was all she needed to hear. Angela's expression hardened, her jaw tightening as she glanced back toward the mall doors. "Stay right here," she said quietly. "I'll be back." "Mom," but she was already walking away, her manager badge catching the sunlight. Every step was powered by a mixture of fury and control. The kind that came from years of biting her tongue for the sake of professionalism. Not today. As she walked through the doors, employees greeted her automatically, but her face said everything. She wasn't there for pleasantries. Inside the security office, Henderson was finishing his report, writing up the incident like it was nothing. He didn't even look up when the door opened. "Can I help you?" he asked without turning around. "You already have," Angela said sharply. "I'm Angela Thompson, mall operations manager, and you're about to explain to me why my 16-year-old son was just escorted out of my mall like a criminal." Henderson froze mid-sentence. The pen dropped from his hand. He turned slowly, his eyes wide as realization crashed into him like a wave. Outside, Marcus sat quietly, unaware of the storm about to unfold inside those walls. For a moment the room was silent except for the faint hum of the security monitors. Henderson blinked, processing what he'd just heard. The woman standing in front of him wasn't another customer complaining about mall policy. She was the Angela Thompson, the mall's operations manager, the woman whose signature was on his paychecks, the one who oversaw every tenant, vendor, and employee inside these walls. Angela didn't give him time to think. "I asked you a question," she said, her tone calm but edged with steel. "Why did you escort my son out of the mall?" Henderson straightened, trying to compose himself. "Ma'am, I didn't realize he was your son." "That's not what I asked," Angela replied sharply. "I asked why you threw a 16-year-old boy out of a food court for sitting quietly. I want to hear your reason." The other guards in the room exchanged uneasy glances. Henderson swallowed hard. "He was loitering," he said finally. "Sitting around, not buying anything. We've had complaints before about teenagers hanging around and causing trouble. I was just following policy." Angela's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Policy?" she repeated. "Show me where in mall policy it says security can remove a customer for sitting down with a drink in his hand." Henderson hesitated, caught off guard. "Well, it's more about preventing issues before they happen. You can tell when someone doesn't belong." Angela's eyes hardened. "Doesn't belong? And what made you decide that my son didn't belong here?" The guard shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that, ma'am. He looked suspicious." "Suspicious," Angela repeated, the word cold on her tongue. "A 16-year-old boy sitting quietly wearing headphones is suspicious?" One of the younger guards in the back tried to disappear into his chair. He'd seen the footage. They all had. Marcus hadn't done a single thing wrong. Angela turned to the nearest monitor. "Pull up the cameras from the food court, 2:45 p.m. Henderson hesitated, but she didn't wait for permission. She leaned over the desk and clicked through the feed herself. She knew the system better than any of them. The footage came up instantly. There was Marcus, sitting at the table with his soda, scrolling through his phone. Henderson approached, speaking to him, towering over him. Marcus stood up, saying something, but Henderson pointed to the door. A moment later, the guard grabbed the back of the chair and pushed it aside. Marcus slung on his backpack and walked out. Angela watched the clip in silence, her jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. When the video ended, she turned back toward Henderson. "Suspicious," she said quietly. "That's your evidence?" The man looked like he wanted to disappear. "Ma'am, You didn't think," she cut in. "You saw a black teenager sitting alone, and that was enough for you." "Ma'am, with all due respect—" "No," she snapped, her composure breaking for the first time. "Don't ma'am me to death to make yourself sound polite. You humiliated my son in front of an entire food court full of people. You grabbed his chair. You dragged him out of my mall like a criminal. And the best excuse you have is that he looked suspicious?" The room fell dead silent. The head of mall security, a tall man named Alvarez, walked in halfway through the exchange, alerted by the commotion. "Angela?" he asked cautiously. "What's going on?" Angela turned to him, still simmering. "What's going on is one of your guards just publicly embarrassed my son for existing." Alvarez's expression darkened. He looked at Henderson. "Tell me she's wrong." Henderson's mouth opened, but no words came. Alvarez turned to the monitors. "Show me." They replayed the clip. Again, there was nothing remotely threatening, just Marcus sitting, then being forced to leave. Alvarez exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "Jesus, Henderson," Angela folded her arms. "You've been telling me for months that we don't have a profiling problem in this mall. Do you still believe that?" Alvarez didn't answer. His silence was enough. Angela continued, her voice steady again, but every word carrying weight. "I want a full report. I want every detail written down and submitted to me by the end of the day. And until further notice, Officer Henderson is suspended." Henderson's head snapped up. "Suspended? Ma'am, I was just doing my—" "You were doing the opposite of your job," Angela said sharply. "Your job is to protect this mall and the people in it. You didn't protect anyone. You intimidated a child." Alvarez gave a small nod, confirming the suspension. "Hand over your badge for now, Henderson." The guard's face went pale. "You can't be serious." Angela leaned in just slightly, her voice soft but lethal. "I am dead serious. You don't get to decide who belongs here based on how they look. Not in my mall." The authority in her tone left no room for argument. As Henderson reluctantly unpinned his badge and set it on the desk, Angela turned back toward the door. "I'll be filing my own report with corporate. You'll hear from them soon." When she stepped out of the office, the air in the corridor felt cooler, lighter, like the tension had shifted direction. Staff who'd overheard bits of the argument whispered quietly. Everyone knew Angela was fair but firm. No one had ever seen her this angry. Outside, Marcus was still sitting near the fountain, looking up each time the doors slid open, waiting for her to come out. When she finally did, she wasn't angry anymore. Not outwardly. She was calm, collected, but her eyes held a quiet fire. "Is it done?" he asked softly. "For now," she said. "He's been suspended. There'll be more to deal with later, but you don't have to worry about him anymore." Marcus nodded, but his voice was small. "Mom, people were recording it." "I know," she said, "and they should have. Sometimes the truth has to be seen." He looked down at his shoes. It was embarrassing. Everyone was staring. Angela's expression softened. She sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did nothing wrong, Marcus. You stayed calm, you told the truth, and you handled yourself better than most adults would have." He gave a weak smile. "Guess that's your influence," she chuckled quietly. "Maybe a little." Then her face grew serious again. "But I need you to understand something. What happened today wasn't about you personally. It's about how people like him see kids like you. And that's why we can't stay quiet." Marcus nodded, understanding more than she wanted him to. Angela stood and offered him her hand. "Come on, let's get some dinner. I think we've both earned it." As they walked away, a few shoppers who had witnessed the earlier scene gave Marcus small nods or sympathetic smiles. Word was spreading fast. Some even whispered, "That's the manager's son." By the next morning, everyone in the mall would know. And by the next week, the entire community would. The video was already online. By the next morning, the video had been viewed over 500,000 times. Someone in the food court had uploaded it to social media with the caption, "Security kicks out black teen for loitering at local mall." He was waiting for his mom, the mall manager. That was all it took. The clip spread like wildfire, picked up by local news outlets, and shared across community pages. People commented by the thousands, some outraged, some heartbroken, and some defending Marcus as though he were their own child. At first, Angela didn't even know it had gone viral. She was back at work early, reviewing reports and preparing for the follow-up meeting with mall administration. Her phone buzzed non-stop, but she ignored it, until her assistant, Priya, rushed into her office with wide eyes. "Angela, have you seen this?" she asked, holding up her phone. Angela frowned. "Seen what?" Priya hesitated, then pressed play. The video loaded, showing Marcus sitting quietly in the food court before Henderson walked up. The conversation wasn't clear, but the body language told the story. Henderson's aggressive stance, Marcus's calm, confused expression, the guard grabbing the chair. Then Marcus walking out, his head down, Angela's throat tightened. She'd seen the footage from the mall cameras already, but something about watching it from a stranger's phone, raw, unfiltered, with the sound of whispers and gasps in the background, hit her differently. "Where did this come from?" she asked quietly. "It's everywhere," Priya said. "Local news stations picked it up this morning. They're calling for a statement." Angela closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. She'd spent her entire career handling public relations crises, floods, tenant fires, power outages, but nothing like this. This was personal. She opened her laptop and started drafting a formal statement. Her fingers moved fast, her tone measured. "The management of Westfield Plaza Mall does not condone any form of discrimination or harassment. We are aware of the incident involving one of our security officers and a minor, and we are conducting a full investigation. We remain committed to maintaining a safe and inclusive environment for all guests." She sent it to corporate within minutes, but she knew it wasn't enough. Words were one thing, action was another. At home that evening, Marcus was still quiet. His phone had exploded with messages. Friends checking in, classmates defending him, even local activists reaching out. Some wanted to meet, to talk about what happened, to use the video as part of a broader discussion about profiling. He appreciated the support, but he also just wanted to breathe. Every time he saw the video, it made his stomach twist. He didn't want to be a story. He just wanted to be normal again. Angela noticed the exhaustion in his eyes when she came home. "How was school?" she asked softly. He shrugged. "Weird. Everyone kept talking about it. Teachers, too. I guess they think I'm some kind of hero now." She smiled gently. "You're not a hero. You're just someone who didn't deserve what happened. But if your story helps people see what's wrong, then that's something good." Marcus leaned back on the couch. "I guess. But I still wish it didn't happen." Angela nodded, understanding completely. "So do I, baby. So do I." Back at the mall, things were moving fast. The corporate office had taken over the investigation, demanding written reports from every employee who'd been on duty. The head of mall security, Alvarez, was under pressure too. He'd always prided himself on running a tight, fair operation. But now, every decision he'd ever made was under review. He called Angela into his office the next day. "You know this is going above us now," he said quietly. "Corporate wants a full incident review. They're even talking about terminating the contract with our security firm." Angela crossed her arms. "Good. Maybe it's time we get professionals who understand what community safety actually means." Alvarez sighed. "Look, I get it. What happened was wrong. But Henderson's saying he's being scapegoated. He claims he was just following training." Angela's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe the training is the problem." Alvarez didn't argue. Deep down, he knew she was right. Later that afternoon, a local news van pulled into the parking lot. Angela watched from her office window as a reporter and cameraman set up near the fountain, the same spot where Marcus had been sitting when she found him. The irony wasn't lost on her. The reporter caught up with her as she walked through the atrium. "Miss Thompson, can we get a quick comment about the incident?" Angela stopped for a moment, weighing her words carefully. She wasn't the kind of person who liked cameras, but she also knew silence could be mistaken for indifference. "What happened to my son was unacceptable," she said clearly. "But this isn't just about him. It's about how easily people can make assumptions based on appearances. This mall serves a diverse community, and that means we have a responsibility to treat every person who walks through these doors with dignity and respect. That's what I stand for." The reporter thanked her, and the clip aired that night on local television. Within hours, her statement was being praised online for its composure and clarity. But not everyone was impressed. Henderson, the suspended guard, wasn't ready to accept the fallout quietly. He told anyone who'd listen that he'd been unfairly accused. "She's only going after me because I embarrassed her," he told a friend over the phone, unaware that the call was being recorded by someone else who didn't buy his version. In his mind, He was the victim. The system was overreacting. He even posted on social media about how political correctness was ruining his career. The comments section didn't go as he hoped. One reply summed it up. "You humiliated a kid for sitting down. Own it." Meanwhile, corporate had called a formal meeting. Angela sat at the long conference table, calm but alert, as the regional director addressed everyone on the call. "We've reviewed the footage, the reports, and the public response. Effective immediately, we're ending our contract with SafeWatch Security. New personnel will be brought in within the week." Alvarez exhaled with visible relief. "That's the right call," he murmured. Angela said nothing. She just nodded slightly, eyes steady. It wasn't victory she felt, just justice. A quiet correction in a system that had been off balance for too long. Outside that same day, Marcus met up with Jaden after school. The two sat on the edge of the fountain again, this time laughing about something on their phones. The tension that had hung over Marcus for days seemed to ease just a little. "You good, man?" Jaden asked. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Better." He looked around the mall entrance and smirked faintly. "Crazy how fast things change," Jaden nodded. "Yeah. You went from that kid who got kicked out to the kid whose mom runs this place." Marcus chuckled. "Guess people see me now?" Jaden grinned. They always should have. As the sun dipped behind the glass dome of the mall, Angela stepped out of her office and spotted the boys laughing. The sight brought her a quiet sense of peace. The wound hadn't healed completely, but it had begun to close. The fallout had exposed more than just one guard's prejudice. It had shown the cracks in the entire system. And thanks to one mother's refusal to stay silent, things were starting to change. But for Angela, the real victory wasn't corporate's apology or the media attention. It was simpler than that. Her son walked through those doors again, head high, knowing he belonged. 2 weeks after the incident, Westfield Plaza Mall had returned to its normal rhythm, at least on the surface. The holiday decorations had gone up, the sound of soft jazz filled the air, and shoppers strolled through the aisles carrying bright red bags. But beneath that calm hum of commerce, a quiet shift had taken place. The security guards now wore new uniforms, from a different firm. Professionals with clean records and mandatory diversity training. They greeted everyone who entered with polite smiles, not suspicion. And every employee in the mall, from cashiers to janitors, had been required to attend a staff meeting on bias awareness and community engagement. Angela sat in her office that morning, reviewing reports, her cup of coffee slowly cooling beside her. She felt different now, stronger perhaps, but also more aware of how fragile fairness could be when left unchecked. Corporate had officially closed the investigation the previous week. The findings were clear. Marcus had done nothing wrong, and Henderson's conduct had violated company policy and professional ethics. His suspension had turned into a termination. She hadn't celebrated the news. She wasn't the type to take pleasure in someone else's downfall, even when they deserved it. But she had allowed herself one deep, steady breath of satisfaction. Justice had been served, and it had been served properly. Marcus was doing better, too. The first few days after the video went viral, he'd been overwhelmed by attention. Strangers reaching out online, people stopping him at school, teachers pulling him aside to talk about resilience and grace under pressure. But as the noise faded, life slowly found its rhythm again. He was back to his after-school routine, helping out at the bookstore, hanging out with Jaden, and spending weekends at the mall again, though at first Angela had hesitated to let him go alone. "You sure you're okay being back there?" she'd asked. He'd smiled. "Yeah, Mom, it's your mall. I think I'll be fine." Now as he walked through the atrium with a smoothie in hand, he felt lighter. Some of the same people who had watched him being escorted out weeks ago now greeted him warmly. A few even apologized, saying they wished they'd spoken up sooner. He appreciated it, but he didn't hold grudges. He just nodded, smiled, and moved on. There was one moment that stood out, though. An elderly woman who worked at a kiosk selling handcrafted jewelry stopped him as he passed. "You remind me of my grandson," she said softly. "I saw what happened that day. I'm sorry nobody stood up for you, but I'm glad your mom did." Marcus smiled gently. "She always does," the woman chuckled. "You hold your head high, young man. The world notices when you carry yourself with dignity." He thanked her and walked on, feeling a small warmth spread through him. Meanwhile, Henderson had vanished from the mall completely. Word had spread that he was struggling to find work. No security firm wanted to hire someone with a public record of misconduct tied to a discrimination scandal. His name had become synonymous with poor judgment. A few weeks later, Angela received an email from him. Short, hesitant, almost embarrassed. "Miss Thompson, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I handled that situation. I didn't mean to disrespect you or your son. I was wrong, and I realize that now. I hope he's doing okay." Angela read it twice. She didn't reply right away. She didn't owe him forgiveness. But she also knew that growth required acknowledgement. Later that night, she typed a brief response. "Mr. Henderson, I appreciate your apology. My son is fine, but I hope this experience has taught you something valuable. Treating people with fairness isn't optional. It's the foundation of your job. I wish you luck moving forward, and I hope you take this lesson with you." She hit send and closed her laptop. It wasn't about closure for him. It was about peace for herself. Over the next few months, the mall became something of a symbol in the community. People appreciated the transparency with which the issue had been handled. Schools began organizing workshops with local leaders about equality, respect, and how small actions could challenge prejudice. Angela was invited to speak at a community event, and though she was hesitant at first, she eventually agreed. When she stood on stage in front of a small audience of parents, teachers, and students, she didn't talk about policies or management. She talked about empathy. "I've spent 20 years managing people," she said. "And what I've learned is simple. Respect costs nothing, but withholding it can destroy everything. My son did nothing wrong that day, but he was made to feel small, and that feeling stays with you, even when you grow past it. That's why we can't let silence win. Speaking up isn't about anger. It's about love. Love for fairness, love for community, and love for the truth." The room had been quiet enough to hear a pin drop. When she finished, the applause was soft at first. Then it grew, steady and sincere. Marcus was sitting in the front row. His smile said more than words ever could. After the event, he walked up to her, grinning. "You should do more speeches," he said. Angela laughed. "One's enough for me. I prefer keeping things running behind the scenes." "Well," he said with a shrug, "you're kind of famous now." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Don't remind me." But later that evening, as they drove home, she looked over at him and said quietly, "You know, when I was your age, I used to think keeping quiet was the safest thing to do. But that day taught me that silence can be just as loud as words. I'm proud of how you handled everything, Marcus." He smiled. "You're the one who did all the fighting, Mom." Angela shook her head. "No, son, you fought too. You kept your composure. You didn't let anger define you. That's strength." The car ride fell into a comfortable silence, filled with mutual pride and understanding. Months passed, and life moved forward. The incident became something people remembered, not because it was scandalous, but because of how it ended, with accountability, grace, and change. Angela was promoted to Regional Operations Manager later that year, a recognition of her leadership during the crisis. She hadn't sought it, but she accepted it humbly. On her last day before transferring to the corporate office, she and Marcus took one final walk through the mall together. They passed the food court, the fountain, and the same table where everything began. Marcus paused for a moment. "That's where it all started, huh?" Angela nodded. "That's where it started, and where it ended." He looked around, the sounds of laughter and chatter filling the air. Funny how one bad moment turned into something good. Angela smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder. "That's what life does, Marcus. It breaks, it bends, but it also rebuilds. What matters is what we do after it breaks." As they stepped out into the sunlight, Marcus took one last glance at the mall behind them. The automatic doors slid closed, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like they were shutting him out. They were simply closing a chapter.